Michael, thanks very much. Equal Chair to Ambassador Chamberlain for comments about the political context.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. I think we all very much appreciated that, and knowing that you've just been there and just were knee-deep in the mud offers a very fresh perspective that shows us how devastating this crisis is, but the scope of it, which is just almost unfathomable. And we'll hear in a few minutes from our other colleague, Mr. Chhibber, about the next phase, the reconstruction. And if the funding is slow on the humanitarian side, I think we'll hear some that it's even slower on the reconstruction, and to prevent crises in the future, perhaps, well, also enormously important. I've been asked to talk about the impact of the floods on the political, social situation. Now, we've all of us who are here know Pakistan well. We know that it's already a vulnerable society. We know that the media loves to talk about Pakistan as the most dangerous place on earth. And now, what has already been considered a shaky place has been hit with one of the most devastating natural disasters, certainly of the year, maybe of the decade, maybe more. How could it possibly survive? What is the impact of the flood? Pakistan's complicated, and I don't pretend to understand Pakistan. I know that I learn something new almost every single day about Pakistan, but just to provide a construct for trying to understand the impact of the floods on the political, social, economic fabric of Pakistan, I like to think of it as being 4 fault lines that run through the rock of Pakistan. And any shift could shift along one of these fault lines and bring even more instability. And the question then is the floods the event that could cause such a shift. Regional and ethnic divides are the first fault line that runs through and divides Pakistan. The major provinces are all pretty much defined by very distinct ethnic groups. And what the floods have done is to provoke migration. So ethnic groups, normally defined in distinct regional areas, are now beginning to mix it up. We're seeing this in a very destabilizing way, particularly in Karachi, with 18 million people. Some say the largest city in the world, some say the 3rd largest city in the world. I don't think it matters. It's certainly among the most violent cities in the world. And to have a migration of ethnic groups that are clashing with each other is not good for the stability of Pakistan in the future. Now, you did have migration of Pashtuns into Karachi even before the floods, largely escaping the violence in Swat and along the west, largely moving off the land and into cities looking for jobs, that had already begun to clash with the majority groups that were in Karachi beforehand, the Urdu-speaking groups that were represented by the MQM, although they like to think of themselves as a national party representing all ethnic groups. They are largely in Karachi, largely Urdu-speaking, and largely the groups that came to Karachi at partition from India. The Pashtuns, represented by the ANP and the people of Karachi, the MQM, have begun to clash over largely land. Squatters coming into land that was unclaimed or claimed by the city, fighting over land rights, has gotten very violent. We've seen an uptick in the last several weeks, month, of drive-by shooting, assassination, just based on ethnic group alone. And this is very worrisome. A second fissure that could crack wide open in Pakistan, although it does not have to, and that is between the have and the have-nots. Now, we all know that Pakistan is still very much a feudal society. It did not implement land reform at the time of partition as India did, although there have been a number of attempts to do so. It hasn't successfully done it. And very small number of families are extremely rich, own vast swaths of land throughout Pakistan, much of that land underwater now. And the 180 million people in Pakistan are among the poorest in the world, no education, half illiterate, 60% under the age of 20, with very little hope for a future. And now the landless have lost what little that they did have. So this is not a stable situation. Will the have-nots, will their anger boil up? Will they be patient as they always have been? I think that's a question. But the rumors in the press, and Pakistan is a country that is noted for conspiracy theories. There are a number of stories that are rampant throughout the land of wealthy landowners. As recently as a week before the deluge with the flood, when drought was the threat, were breaking the levees to divert water into their parched land and denying the poor people. And then as soon as the floods came, they broke the levees again to pour the water into and flooding out villagers. These stories are rampant, they're believed. Whether they're true or not, and I don't know, they are believed. And they have enough credence that the provincial government of Punjab has launched an investigation. This anger is there. And unless it is dealt with through government services and through raising the pie for everybody, it will continue to seethe, and that is simply not sustainable in any culture. A third rift within the Pakistan polity is the decades-old competition between the professional military and the political class. Largely the political democratic class, largely dominated by feudals and industrialists who get elected to the parliament and to civilian government. And the history of Pakistan's politics is a saga of military coups and then the long struggle to get back to a democratically elected government. The majority of Pakistanis are committed to democracy, and even the military believes in the democratic system. But there is this going back and forth. Now today, because of the strains that the floods present in Pakistan, a lot of rumors about potential coup, military coup, military being frustrated with what they see as a federal government that is non-existent in helping the people, that is filled with intrigue and incompetence and corruption, and a desire to get back to a more technocratic government. I don't think so. Most experts believe that the army under General Kiani has enough on his hands. The military is stretched very thin, providing humanitarian assistance throughout the entire swath of the country, at the same time that it is dealing with a growing internal insurgency and, of course, their own overwhelming preoccupation with the threat from India. They've got enough on their hands. Most experts believe they have no intention of taking on the government themselves. And there seems to be a national compact that this time, this elected government has to see it constitutionally to the end, or maybe the fabric of democracy in Pakistan will break somehow in terror. So I think there is a commitment to it. A more likely scenario is that the establishment, and by that it's usually meant certain favored media outlets, the army and supporters of the army, and some in the judiciary, work together to pressure the current government led by President Zardari, pressure them through the judiciary, through bringing cases against corruption against certain officials, to pressure them to clean up some of the favored lieutenants of President Zardari and institute a slimmer more technocratic professional government that favors the military. That could very well happen. The fourth and final fault line is that threatens Pakistan's stability is, of course, the spreading reach of extremism. Some call it Talibanization, but it's certainly beyond the Taliban in Pakistan, with the growth of strength and viciousness of some of the, what they call the Punjabi, Southern Punjabi terrorist groups. Now look, we could talk all afternoon about that, and we're not here to talk about security. We're here to talk about the floods. But there's no doubt that when there is social upheaval and anger among the poorest of the poor, then extremists do have a fertile ground for appealing to people. But it is an exaggeration to say that the extremist groups have used this opportunity to upstage the international community, and the army scene really is the only real government instrument that is providing assistance to the people. That the extremists are upstaging them in providing assistance. They simply don't have the resources. They can't reach the stranded people any better, and they don't have the resources for sustained aid. They're a flash in the pan. The army is truly the beneficiary in public opinion as being there to help people the most. The U.S. government, but what is true is that the extremists in threatening humanitarian workers, and Michael mentioned this, and threatening the government as it delivers aid by targeting them, just that threat alone has intimidated certainly the U.S. Embassy and other international organizations from sending its personnel out to the countryside to reach the people. And I believe that that's a mistake and is actually hurting the effort there. In conclusion, let's get back to the question. Will have the floods are the floods that final trigger that will cause a shift under any one of these four fault lines and further destabilize Pakistan? I don't know. I don't think anybody does. But I do think that there are enough fragility within Pakistan that efforts need to be made to address the true needs of the people, of the poorest of the poor. Now, there are some very good people who are working very hard at this. In the federal government, for example, the finance minister, Mr. Sheikh, is using this crisis to call for an imposition of a special tax on the very wealthy, a flood tax, to raise money for the federal government effort to help the people. This is, for those of you who know Pakistan, know that it is one of the countries that is only 9% of the GDP is raised by taxes in the country. It's one of the countries in the world that collects least taxes, and that's unsustainable in an economy that doesn't generate savings. So the finance minister is trying. He's not getting very far. The IMF is putting pressure on the parliament and the current government to impose a sales tax, and that's being resisted by the wealthy parliamentarians. So there are some good impulses there. They just need to be carried through. And finally, at the local level, even if local government and federal government has failed to really address the massive needs, and this isn't really too much of a criticism, they're just not geared to it. This has been an overwhelming problem. But there have been some good, very innovative solutions. In Punjab, for example, Shahbaz Nawaz has turned to the private sector and civil society as the delivery mechanisms for the assistance, bypassing the bureaucracy that's too slow and frankly distrusted by most of the people. So these are to be encouraged. And I think I'll probably end it there. Thank you.